Welcome back to my couch. I am so glad you're here with me again. Today, we're just gonna do what we usually do and jump right into it. This video is about why you do not where you eat. If you're wondering about my hair, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was in a bun. Whenever I put my hair in a bun, it could even be a loose bun. If it's in a bun for too long, I don't know if I'm just doing them too tight, but I don't think I am. I get a headache. So I have just let my hair out. And what that means is why you don't get into relationships at work with coworkers or managers or anyone who you have a direct working relationship with. This one's going to be an interesting one because I know I have quite a few stories. And in particular, I do know two people that are happily, two different sets of people, let me be clear, that are happily married and or in happy relationships. And, take this with a grain of salt if you decide that you really want to pursue somebody at work. But I do urge you to listen to the cons because there are many cons to messing around with a coworker or a manager or a subordinate. What's the word I'm looking for? It'll come to me in editing, and I'll put it down here. But some of the stories I have are not very pleasant, and they don't reflect well on the parties that are doing the whole relationship thing. And it's not because they're bad people per se, or because they would never have a relationship that would work out. It's more so because the personal issues that they have in their personal relationship leach into work and the work environment. And it makes for a ton of good gossip if you're a gossiper, which I do not condone. I have listened in, I'm not gonna lie, but I do not normally condone just going around gossiping at work. And it just kind of skews people's views on other people, especially if there's a direct working relationship and you're with a larger team of people who also know about the relationship. So it's just a whole bunch of madness. So I'm going to go with my first story, and this seems to be everywhere I work for whatever reason. There's always been, I shouldn't say there is always, there has always been one man in particular who gets around in the office, and it's always somebody who is just not, in my opinion, so based on my preferences, not the person I would expect to be getting around the office. And it's just unfortunate because then it skews everyone's opinions of them, because once you've done something multiple times, you kind of get a reputation for doing that thing multiple times. So for example, if you stay late a number of times working, let's say you're an extra ambitious worker, you work until 7 or 8 every night, let's say you usually end at 5, and eventually you get to be known as the person who's always staying late. And whether or not that's true is not up for discussion, because if people have seen you do it a few times, it tends to just happen that's your MO. So what happens when you start getting into relationships, whether they're formal or casual, is you kind of get to be known as that person that just gets around in the office. That can be good and bad. I don't know, maybe good in the sense that you're seen as enthusiastic or charismatic, or somebody who just generally has people attracted to them, whether it be because of physical appearance and looks, or mental stimulation, or just being a kind person sometimes. I don't know. I personally don't do anything with coworkers, but if you have had a successful or unsuccessful work relationship, let me know in the comments how it went. If you need to change names, no questions asked. I get it. So there's always one person, we'll name him a generic name, John, and John just likes to flirt. John likes to flirt, and John likes to have a good time. John likes to flirt and have a good time with coworkers, particularly of the female variety. So John will hang out with Amy, another generic name. John will hang out with Amy one day, leave the work party with her that night, and then in another week or two, John will talk to Clarissa, and then we'll leave the holiday party with Clarissa, and so on and so forth. Insert other names here. But what happens is John gets this reputation of being a playboy. Let's say that's the word we'll use. John's going to be a playboy. And what happens with all of these women is maybe they're seen as easy. And I'm not saying that this is right at all. I'm not. I'm saying this to be completely honest. Sometimes that's just what people think. Or maybe people think that you have a certain standard. Maybe they think you have low standards, depending on who the John. It could be that women that mess around with whomever have a low standard, or it may be that they have a high standard depending on how this person carries themselves or how often this person is doing these things. But one thing I've always noticed is that people tend to kind of look down. I don't know if I would say look down upon both John and Amy. I'll just go back to my original names, both John and Amy. I've never really seen it to where, in my experience again, to where people will only look down on Amy because sexism does still exist, or where people will only look down on John. I've always seen it as a negative for both parties, or multiple parties, depending on how many people John is sleeping around with, or Amy sleeping around with, either or. Okay, so here are my list of cons for why you shouldn't be messing around with anybody at work. One, I have always seen in my experience that it just reflects negatively on both parties. Why? One, because people gossip, and whether or not the gossip is true is completely irrelevant, because for whatever reason, office gossip just explodes throughout the office, and it's not a good look. I mean, when you are messing around with somebody that you work closely with or that you report into, the stigma can be that you're sleeping your way to the top, which can be completely untrue in some circumstances. And I've even seen it where both people in a couple will go to HR, and whoever is being managed by the person that they've started a relationship with will then be changed to have a new manager, so that they're not working directly with that manager who they now have a relationship with anymore. And I think that that's the best route to go if you are sleeping with your manager, or vice versa. I think it's better if you do see it being a serious relationship, or even if not, CYA. But it's probably better to just try and get some type of reorg so that person is not reporting directly into you, for ethical reasons and also just for gossipy reasons. Because even if the supervisee, I don't know why, the direct report, couldn't think of that word for a minute. So even if the direct report is due a promotion or has earned whatever it is, whether it be a pay raise, a bonus, a promotion, that earned work can easily be skewed as, well, this person just slept with that person, so it's obvious why they would get XYZ. And it's just better to cover your butt. CYA, if you don't know, is cover your butt. But you want to, no pun intended, you want to make sure you cover all of your bases, especially if your intent isn't to be shady. Especially when it comes to having a team and messing around with one or two people on the team, if you have a position of power where you can promote, demote, whatever the case may be, anyone on the team. Reason number 2 why you should not mess around with people at work is because, kind of like in point 1, and in my coworkers aren't your friends, aren't your real friends video, sometimes the personal can just kind of spill into work. So if you and your partner are having issues and you are letting that affect not only your work, but your working relationships, especially as they relate to other coworkers or other members of your team, I mean, that's toxic. If you're arguing at home and then like an hour later you have to come into work and you're still arguing or you're still tense, people can feel the tension, whether or not you think you're giving off those vibes or not. And it just makes for a very uncomfortable working environment for everyone involved. So not just you and your partner. So it's better to just be free of dealing with that. Not only that, but if I'm upset with my partner, I don't know if I want to see them sitting right across from me and have to look at their face all day if I'm already irritated. I think that'd just keep making me irritated until it's worked out. So that's number 2. And then it bleeds back into the whole gossip thing, because then everybody's going to gossip and everyone's going to wonder if you've been trying to keep it on the low. People are going to get clued in to maybe they have a different relationship outside of work. Why would they both be upset at the same time? You know, it's just little things like that that just make work much more complicated than it needs to be, especially if you're just going in to do your job. Number 3 is there can be a little bit of resentment or a power dynamic issue if you are both up for, let's say you are both coworkers and you're both on similar tracks. Sometimes there can be a little bit of resentment or just general tension if you're both going up for one promotion. So if one of you gets it and the other one doesn't, how does that affect your dynamic? How does that affect the relationship? And then how does that carry over into work? Are you going to be able to report to that person? Ethically, probably not, and you'll probably have to move to a different team. And if so, is that something you've considered? Is that something you thought about before you got into a relationship with this person? And is that something you even want to do? Which one of you should be the one to leave? I think that the water gets a little bit murky when you start moving into not being coworkers and suddenly being a manager and a direct report, or a supervisor and a subordinate, or any type of relationship where there's now a power dynamic and one partner is kind of calling the shots over the other partner. And in this case, I think that's more of an ethical issue with work. I think that's when you bring in HR especially, but I'm not here to tell you how to live. You do what you think is best for you, and don't say I didn't tell you so, or don't say I didn't warn you if things do go awry. The 4th thing is if you break up and you're not able to move past the breakup, or if you have real friends at work or people who you confide in and tell all of your deep dark secrets to, then you're kind of skewing the view of your ex-partner to the people who you're cool with, the people who you talk to. And vice versa, your partner could be trashing you to their friends, or even worse, to your boss. And I think all of these subpoints kind of lead somehow back into point 1, where people's views at work are changed of you and your partner. And that's not really a good look. It's scary. It's hella scary when you think you're going into something for the long term and it just doesn't work out. And now your whole office knows and you're kind of embarrassed, because now what do you do? How do you handle the situation going forward? How do you do damage control? So those are the cons and why I don't think you should be messing around at work. Now to move on to cases where I've seen office relationships be a success. One of the few genuine friends that I have is actually married to somebody that she used to work with. Granted, if I remember correctly, they weren't working together for a long time. While they were in a relationship, one party actually ended up leaving the company by choice to go somewhere else. But I think that that may have helped in leading to a successful relationship. I don't know. Maybe we'll have her on the channel at some point in time, or him on the channel at some point in time. But I do find that they seem to be happy and healthy and in a very loving and wonderful relationship. So things worked in their favor, and there wasn't much gossip. There wasn't a lot of drama surrounding them. I think that if anything, they were able to have a very mature and low-key, I'll say, low-key relationship. And whether or not that led to the success of the relationship, I don't know. But I do know that they're happy and together now. So that's one. Two, I do know someone that was dating their manager. It got serious. They went to HR, and one of the partners in that relationship ended up being moved to work for another manager. And that way, that person was no longer directly working for their partner. They both ended up being really happy and have a healthy relationship to this day. Traveled pre-virus days. It depends, I think, a lot on your maturity level, and I think it also depends a lot on what you define as a clear boundary as far as working together and being in a relationship, and your company's policy and how you uphold those standards, especially in your day-to-day working life. So I think that those things may play a factor. I'm just speculating. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to both of these couples at some point to get their perspective on it. But yeah, I think it's just much easier to not do it, because ultimately, if you are messing around with a coworker and everything kind of backfires in your face, you could be out of a job. And I think that that's probably the most important thing, is that you still have your job, especially if you break up and don't have a job. So now you don't have the person that you were pursuing and kind of risking your job for, and you don't have the job that's paying your bills, I assume, unless you have multiple streams of income. Wink, wink. Essentially, you're kind of risking it all for a maybe relationship. Could be successful, could be not. I guess that's anything in life. You're kind of having these opportunity choices where you're going to risk something by making the choice that you make. I'm all for it as long as you know the pros and cons, you know yourself, you know your potential partner, and you just do what's best for you. Because in the end, who really cares what anybody else thinks, right? Anyway, with that, I'm out for this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this video, like it. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd love to have you. But again, no pressure. I'm just glad you're here. In the meantime, I'm out. Peace.